Hello everyone, this is FIDE Victor Newstroyev and welcome to my mastermind, which I decided to call Pawns as the Soul of Chess. So we are waiting for more attendees to come. Currently, I see there is a kind of a technical issue. Let me know if the sound and video quality is good, if the video is lagging or not. In a chess game. Okay, video and audio are good. Thank you. From time to time. That's why I'm not satisfied with it. So what about stream to Facebook? Okay, looks like everything is working properly. Let's start. Okay, hi Ronald, I'm glad that you joined us today. So actually we conduct such events every Sunday, and I'm sure this is where you can learn a lot of helpful things and stuff. Okay. Let me tell you something first. Well, have you located? Can you please name? There are maybe 5 or 6 more factors, but at least 2 more are important, and this is what you should know. So what are these factors? Who knows? Well, okay, let me answer this question. Well, these factors are, you look at which side you have more space, and if you see that they're rated, so on the queen side in that case. In fact, if your opponent has weaknesses, then your plan is simple, just extra piece. So there is a technical problem. Let me, it's pretty well. Just let me do one thing and so this technical problem is only my internet. You probably know the stream. Oh, everything is better. It should be. I'm 100% sure it should be better. Now, at least I see that it's not lagging anymore. Oh. So, there are several factors to take into account, but how the pawns are allocated play the most significant role. For example, if you look at this position, well, some of you may probably know that this came from Benoni defense. I can show a move order later, and now I want you to white. what white plans are? Well, okay, now let's talk about black. Black should play on that side, and they should convert their pawn majority there. They should advance pawns and maybe create a pass pawn on c3. That's why white usually plays b4 to stop it, to fix this pawn, and well, then c4 is played, and there is a pass pawn on c4. It has some advantages, some disadvantages. So let me show an example of what can be done. Well, first of all, let's talk about other black plans. Well, they may also play f5 in order to get rid of their centre, to undermine this pawn, and then it will be difficult to convert these three pawns against these two into a passed pawn, because the king is there on g1, and if so, the king becomes the object of the attack. Well, black may also obtain some counterplay with h5, h4, especially if there is a knight on g3, and then h3 to expose the king. So these are typical plans. So f5 to undermine b5 and c4 in order to create a pass pawn on the flank, and h5, h4, three plans. White actually has also three plans. It's e5 right away, f4 and d5, and b4 to stop it. Okay, now let me demonstrate an example of the game played between two strong players. They were two grandmasters. It was Vladimir Rakopyan playing against Levan Pansulaya. Wait, what's going on? Lichess is not working. I'm Can you please, guys, check if Lichess is working? Looks like not. So first I fixed the problem with my internet. Chess get down. Okay, now Lichess is back, and you should soon see the picture and the board. Yeah, I'm checking if you are able to. Okay, let so fine. Here, white plays bishop f4. Will be hanging. Now audio should be okay. Okay. So a6 was played. Knight d2. White continued with queen c2 in order to play e4. So bishop e7, not g7. Well, that's why it's actually inaccuracy, in my opinion. And then castle, then e4 castle, rook e8, something like that. But then it's hard to play knight d7. because d6 will be hanging. So activity on that side, it's quite typical. If only we allow our opponent to play this move, then knight gets there, attacking d5, and also pressuring some important square. 4 a4, castle, e4, rook e8, bishop e2. White pieces are coordinated better, they just need to castle, which they actually do after this slow move bishop f8. Now black plays knight e5. What do you think white plan should be here? F4 to g3. Well, yeah, almost. I would say h3 and then bishop h2 and then f4. That's right, then e5. And the pawn on e5 would be protected several times. That was the best plan. However, white made a mistake. They decided to take with their rook, and then knight c4 and f4 e5 is played much faster. They got a passed pawn, and the second pawn move, that was very important. They play queen c7, and finally they get e5. So white Yes, now the quality is much better. Okay, guys, sorry for the delay. So today something wrong really happens. Last time we didn't have so many technical problems. Sorry about that. So let me quickly repeat what happened in the game. So let me quickly repeat. Um, E5 was played, and well, they couldn't capture this pawn because of d6 as a counter strike. That was demonstrated. b5 was played instead, and after a few moves, white achieved almost everything they wanted. So rook d8, they got two pawns in the center. One of them is a passed pawn, and they also got a strong attack on the enemy king. Black achieved almost nothing. They opened the b file, but none of these pawns is a passed pawn, and looks like there is no counterplay for black. They just have to defend and try to save their position. What do you think white have to play here in order to win the game? Knight h5 is suggested by Darius. Knight h5. Well, if they take, you can continue with this move and then get your queen to g3. That makes sense. But I think, Darius, that knight is a more important piece rather than the rook. So you'd better have this knight into the attack than your rook on f5. So instead of knight h5, you can actually play rook f5 right away. And then they cannot capture the rook, so they are piece down. If they take, it's queen g3, and then if king goes there, you check. Black lost. So this strong pawn center is decisive, and it allows you not only to have a strong kingside attack that white successfully realized in this position, but also to restrict enemy pieces coordination, and if you want to pass the game to the endgame, or you somehow had to exchange queens, they would offer two pawns in the center and a passed pawn on d6. Okay, so let's look at this position again. At this pawn structure, e4 d5 against d6 c5. So the main idea was to play e5, supported with the pawn on f4. White was even okay to exchange a bishop for a knight, which was a kind of inaccuracy, but it did work anyway. And then they focused either on the kingside attack or on two pawns in the center, which didn't allow black to get any counterplay here. Also, a5 was important to prevent b5. So this is how you see that pawn structure affects your typical plans. Now let's look at another pawn structure. Let's look at dragon. This is dragon. It can happen in, well, it can happen in English opening with reversed colors, but usually it's either a dragon or accelerated dragon. Well, I chose these two pawn structures just to explain. But actually, I want you to know how to play with your pieces depending on pawn structure. Well, you can learn maybe 20 different pawn structures and typical plans. Well, each pawn structure has usually 2-3 plans for each side. So after you watch it once, you at least will learn how to play after if you reach this pawn structure with white and black. And if you, let's say, analyze Caracan pawn structure, then you'll know how to play with that pawn structure. When you play a game and you see that the pawn structure is quite similar to what I explained to you or you learned it somewhere else, you already know what are typical plans and you decide, well, this is my plan, this is also this is the other plan I can do, and this is the third one because of this or that. So you have 2-3 different options, and then you choose which of these 3 plans work better for this concrete position. And this is how you won't experience problems with coming up with a plan. So that's the main goal of this event, and this is how you can base your planning depending on the pawn structures. Okay. So what are common plans for white? Well, you know that in dragon, white usually castles to the queen side and black castles to the king side. And of course, in such a case, it's quite common when both players try to attack the enemy kings with pawn marches like f3, g4, h4, h5. And black tries to play this move, a6, b5, then b4, a5, a4, b3, opening the king's position. It's quite often when instead black sacrifices the rook on c3 for a knight, but improves their pieces' coordination, and the bishop on g7 becomes more, well, becomes stronger and really dangerous for white's position. What then? Well, if white decides to castle kingside, so they both castle to the king side because black almost never castles to the queen side, the king will be too exposed on the queen side. Then white has to play in the center. They have to move their rook to d1, get the knight to d5, and this exchange of a pawn structure usually favors white because through the e file they can attack the backward pawn. What black does? Black tries to get their bishop to e6, knight to e5. Well, sometimes the bishop cannot get to e6 because of the knight on d4, so bishop comes to d7, rook comes to c8, and knight from either a5 or e5 goes to c4, pressuring black position, the pawn here, maybe the bishop here. And the pawn march is also a plan, even if the king is on g1. So this is what black should do. Why that happens? Well, I'm sure you understand that these and these are semi-open files. That's why both players play on them. So white plays on the d file, black plays on the c file. And if the king is castled there, then, well, I'm 100% sure that you know that when the kings are castled to the opposite side, an attack on the enemy king is the main plan. Of course, there are some exemptions. For example, Najdorf Sicilian. So let me show you. E4, C5, knight F3, D6, D4, C takes D4, knight F6, knight C3, A6, bishop E3, for example, E5, knight goes there. Then it's bishop E6, F3, knight D7, queen D2, bishop E7, G4, castle, B5, G5, knight goes there, bishop takes, pawn takes, F5. And in this position, white cannot attack on the king side. They have just a few pieces there, and black pieces are concentrated. So this is where you cannot play on the king side as white, because you know that black pieces are concentrated there, and you are unlikely to succeed with the king side attack because you don't have material majority on that side of the board. That's why here, despite that the king is on the queen side, white has to play on that side, and their typical plans are these, with the idea of playing c4, rook c1, and playing through the c file, or knight a5, knight to c6, and then still king b1 and opening the c file to get the rook. And in this position, white is not afraid that their king becomes the object of the attack, because white pieces on the queen side are enough to defend the king, and black is unable to get material majority on the king side, on the queen side, so their queen side attack won't work. This is a kind of an exemption, but in dragon, when you are castled to the queen side, you attack on the king side. Now let me demonstrate an example. The game between two grandmasters. Well, probably you don't know them, me neither. It was just a regular dragon with bishop g7, f3, castle, queen d2, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop d7, and after castle queen side, black plays queen a5. Well, yeah, this move is also possible. a6, b5 is another possible plan, but queen a5 is good. So for bishop b3, rook f c8, both rooks should stay on that flank because black intends to attack, and they create the misplayed in order to exchange, to open the file, bring the queen to the h file, usually after the exchange of bishops on h6, or sometimes with queen h2. And this is where I want you to guess the move that black played in the game. Common move. Okay, black played rook c3. Well, I can't say that this move is the best, but it's playable, and it's a good move when you want to force your opponent, when you want to surprise your opponent, and when you want to force them to solve problems. Because this is where white can get a better position, a slightly better position, I would say, but at the same time, they should play properly. They took on c3 with the pawn because they wanted to succeed with their kingside attack, so by playing bishop h6 and then queen to h6. They'd better capture with the queen. In such a case, queen takes queen, knight h5 to gain a pawn, so to get some compensation. And this position is unclear. For example, g4, knight goes back, bishop h6, a5, but a3, rook c8 attacking there, king b2, b5, but bishop g7, king g7, rook h4, a4 means bishop a2, so this position is kind of unclear. Something like that. So bishop h6, queen h6, and in order to prevent, maybe to prevent this move, they just played knight f6. Well, they could capture on c3, but if this move is played, it's so if this move is played, king e2, and if queen c5, it's rook h5. It's a deadly attack. That's why knight f6 was played. King b2 in order to support the pawn. So black retreats with their queen. So now white has to defend their position in order to save it. Well, probably they could play a better move, sacrifice the second pawn, but then continue their attack with g4 or knight f5. So queen c3, then I think g4 can be played with g5 idea. That would work. Okay, so king b2 was played, rook c8, and queen comes to e3 to save the position. Queen c5, rook h4, with the idea to double. However, this time black is faster. They have enough defenders on the king side, and then they play here a5. a5 is played, rook gets to the h file. Now it's still not hanging, but the idea, well, let me show you. For example, if you continue here with, let's say you just continue with something like that. I think that was their idea. And this move in order to checkmate here. And I don't really see how black can defend their position. Move the e-pawn maybe. Yeah, moving the e-pawn would work actually. Okay, so anyway, e6 was played later here, but they could already win with a4 move. And here rook h7, queen h6, then e6, and queen h7, king f8. So this bishop is trapped. At the moment, the material is equal, but the bishop is trapped, so black is able to get material advantage. And something like that doesn't work. The king goes there, and after queen h4, here you can continue with this move, and queen h7 is not a big problem. Your knight escapes there to f7. And well, here it's fine. So rook h7 is not doing much. You have this move. You can also take on c3 first and then maybe checkmate, but at least bishop e8 saves your position. Let's go back. e6 was played instead, a4, b5 to open the queen side. So this is how typically we attack when the king is when the kings are on the opposite flanks. A takes b5, a4, and, well, they cannot take because knight c4. They have to retreat. And then bishop b5. Well, probably they could save the position with this move, but then bishop c4, trying to play queen a3, after which the game would be over. For example, rook b1, queen a3, rook b2. And here just this move. And the idea of this move is to play rook b8, exchange rooks, but to gain this bishop for free with a checkmate. However, in the game it was rook h7 played. But this line didn't work. Knight h7, queen h6, queen c3 check, king goes to b1. And here I want you to suggest the next move that was played by black. What do you think? What this move was? Okay, so there are not so many suggestions here. Well, probably it's because of the internet issue. Okay, so here we can play bishop c4, and this queen h7 and queen h8 idea doesn't work. After queen c8, it's bishop a2, and that queen is hanging. So actually the rook on c8 was protected indirectly. That's why in the game they took on c4 with their bishop. Rook c4, threatening with this move. So queen h4, now queen d8 is a kind of a threat. That's why just simply king e8. So queen d8 was a threat. For example, if, let's say if a3, then this move, king goes there and queen h8 is a mate. So king e8, queen f6, king d7. King d7 is played in order to prevent these maneuvers. Rook d8 or queen d8, which could allow black white to deliver a perpetual check, maybe a checkmate actually. Yeah, it's a checkmate. So rook d8, rook h8, king goes there, and queen d8 is a mate. So king d7 was played in advance. They played this move, and here, just to simplify the position, rook c8 was played. They take, king takes, but look at the position. Black is threatening with a mate. This knight is hanging, so they lose. And then queen b4 was played. Why queen b4? Well, I think the answer, if this move, it's still queen e1. And if this move, it's queen c4, and they are a3 move. That would be better, queen b2 check. There will be no event next Sunday. I don't want to stream with a huge delay. So, what you could learn from our today's webinar. First of all, you should remember how to come up with a plan according to the pawn structure. But in order to come up with a plan, when a certain pawn structure appears or a similar pawn structure appears, you should know typical plans in different pawn structures. The second thing you should learn is that when you have space on one side of the board, you are more likely to play on that side and achieve something there. When you have pawn majority, you should create a pass pawn on that flank, and you should advance your pawn majority. It's mainly for the previous example when we were talking about Benoni pawn structure, this one. When you have when your pieces are concentrated on one flank, you are likely to play on that flank. When you have extra material, you'd better simplify and calm the position to avoid blunders and to prevent any tactical opportunities from your opponent. And if you're going to attack, let's look at this position. If you're going to attack the enemy king, you should make sure that the center is stable and there is no counterplay for your opponent, like it was in this game that we analyzed a few webinars before, where your task was to play g4, h4, h5 and open the position on the flank because the center is closed and stable. Okay, so yeah, pawn structure affects a plan a lot, and that's why today I would like to present my newest course, which is on sale on thechessworld.com. It's Planning Guide for Club Players. This is where I analyze different pawn structures and different type of positions and explain typical plans for white and black. So if you meet a similar pawn structure or a similar type of the position, so well, yeah, I analyze most popular pawn structures, but I also analyze close positions in general, open positions in general, as well as end games. So, well, I don't know what about you, but most of my students, well, not most, but maybe the half of my students struggle when the game comes to the very end. When it comes to the end game, they don't know what exactly to play, what plan to follow. Well, we analyze, we work on end games, but sometimes they just miss what they should do. Some tries to checkmate, but it's hard to checkmate with no queens on the board. And well, here I demonstrate the opening that your opponent is playing. This is also well demonstrated. So how to develop pieces if you don't know this opening, and well, or you just know this opening but you forget the move to play. So everything can be found here, and now this move is on sale. You can get it only for $49. I'll share this link in the chat. So I'm very